Imagine boarding a flight, excited to settle into first class, only to be met with judgmental stares and whispered comments from the very people meant to serve you. That's exactly what happened to one black woman who took her seat in luxury, only to feel the sting of prejudice from the flight attendants. They laughed, exchanged knowing looks, and even questioned if she was in the right seat, assuming she couldn't possibly belong in first class. What they didn't know was that this woman wasn't just a passenger, she was the owner of the airline they worked for. As their mocking continued, she stayed calm, watching their behavior unfold. But then the truth came out in a way they never expected, turning the entire situation upside down. Stick around to hear how this unbelievable story unfolded and the powerful lesson it left behind. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the woman sat quietly, observing every smirk and side comment from the flight attendants. They seemed so confident in their assumptions, laughing softly as they passed her by, offering half-hearted service while showering others in first class with smiles and attention. She noticed the way they avoided eye contact, the way their judgment lingered in the air like a heavy cloud. What they didn't realize was this woman had worked her way to the top against all odds. Her journey wasn't just about success. It was about breaking barriers and rewriting the rules. Owning an airline wasn't just a dream come true. It was her way of showing the world what was possible. But she wasn't ready to reveal her story just yet. Instead, she decided to let the moment play out, waiting for the right time to step into the spotlight. As the flight attendants continued their rounds, the woman couldn't help but notice the stark difference in how they treated the other passengers in first class. Every other seat seemed to be a stage for their warm smiles and overly polite tones, but when they reached hers, their demeanor shifted. It was as if her presence was an inconvenience they couldn't hide. They asked curt questions and avoided any genuine interaction, assuming she wouldn't notice or care. One flight attendant in particular seemed to lead the charge, sneaking glances toward the woman and whispering to her colleague. Their quiet laughter wasn't as discreet as they thought, and the woman's calm exterior masked her growing frustration. She'd have faced these microaggressions before, but this time felt different. The other passengers began to pick up on the tension, their curious gazes darting between the woman and the flight crew. No one said a word, but the atmosphere grew heavier. The woman stayed poised, knowing the moment of truth was coming. All it would take was one announcement, one reveal, to change everything. The flight was well underway, but the tension in the cabin hadn't eased. The woman remained composed, quietly observing the flight attendants as they continued their dismissive behavior. Each time they walked past her, their actions became bolder, avoiding offering refills, making sure their conversations excluded her, and even exchanging knowing smirks as if she didn't belong. One of the attendants seemed to relish the chance to exert power, leaning in with a condescending tone. "Are you sure you're comfortable here? First class can be a bit overwhelming for some people," she said with a forced smile. The woman simply looked up and replied, "I'm very comfortable, thank you," her voice steady but firm. Unbeknownst to the crew, whispers had started to circulate among the other passengers. A few seemed to recognize the woman, their eyes widening in surprise. The flight attendants, however, remained clueless, their arrogance blinding them to the growing undercurrent of anticipation. Something was about to shift, and it would be bigger than any of them could imagine. Just as the woman settled back into her seat, another unexpected moment began to unfold. A passenger from across the aisle leaned toward the flight attendants during their next pass. "Do you know who she is?" he asked in a hushed but audible tone. His question caught them off guard, their confident smiles faltering for a split second. They exchanged a quick, puzzled glance, but brushed it off with a dismissive laugh. "No," one replied, her voice dripping with disinterest. "Why should we?" The man gave a slight smirk, clearly enjoying their obliviousness. "You'll find out soon enough," he said cryptically, before returning to his seat. His words hung in the air, creating a ripple of curiosity among the nearby passengers. The flight attendants grew uneasy, their earlier bravado now tinged with uncertainty. The woman, still calm and composed, caught the man's eye and gave a subtle nod, as if signaling that everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, the crew scrambled to regain control of the situation, unaware that the true reveal was only moments away, and it would leave them speechless. As the plane began its descent, the cabin filled with the usual announcements. But this time, something was different. The captain's voice came over the intercom, calm yet authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to take a moment to acknowledge a very special passenger on board today. It's not every day that we have the honor of flying with the owner of this airline." The flight attendants froze, their faces draining of color as the words sank in. Passengers turned to look at the woman in first class, some whispering in astonishment. The captain continued, "Please join us in expressing our gratitude to her for creating opportunities for so many of us in the aviation industry." The woman finally stood, her grace and poise commanding the room. The flight attendants stumbled over themselves, trying to apologize, their earlier behavior now a glaring mistake. But before they could speak, she addressed them with a calm, unwavering voice. "I believe we've already been introduced," she said, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. And just as they thought the worst was over, she added, "I'll be reviewing this crew's performance personally." The weight of her words hung heavy, leaving the entire cabin in stunned silence as the plane touched down, a final reminder of the consequences of underestimating someone based on appearances. As the passengers disembarked, the woman walked calmly down the jet bridge, her presence commanding respect without her needing to say another word. The flight attendants stood awkwardly near the exit, their earlier confidence replaced by nervous glances and forced smiles. She acknowledged them with a polite nod, but didn't stop, leaving them to reflect on their actions. Outside the terminal, the woman was met by her executive team, who greeted her with warm smiles and genuine admiration. As they walked together, she reflected on the flight, not with anger, but with a sense of purpose. This moment wasn't just about proving a point. It was about reminding people of the value of respect and dignity, no matter who you think someone is. Her story soon became a powerful lesson, shared far and wide, inspiring others to rethink their assumptions and lead with kindness. And for those flight attendants, it was a day they would never forget.